Yeah, you better get your hands off of Syria. Don't believe all the media hysteria. They say the whole country is against the side. What about every single pro-government march? What about the character of the opposition? What kind of government do they really envision? It's like Libya 2.0 if you ask me. The CIA is now just sitting and laughing. They take popular discontent and spin it. Want to see the Arab revolution diminished? What about Palestine support from Damascus? Will that still remain if the country is captured?
This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now, here to welcome back to Freedom Now our brother Johnny Achi, who is with the Arab Americans for Syria. Welcome back, brother Johnny.
Hello, Sister Thage. Thanks for having me again on the show.
Thank you for all your great work, brother. And can you give us an update of what is happening with the safe zones?
Sure. 2 days ago, on May 4th, there was another round of talks in Astana, Kazakhstan. I think this is the third one. And Iran, Turkey, and Russia signed a memorandum, an agreement on the creation of 4 security zones in Syria. Those 4 zones are in the northern part of the province of Idlib, in the area north of the city of Homs, which is in the middle of the country, and then in eastern Ghouta near Damascus, and finally in the southern part of Syria in the city of Daraa. Those 4 security zones, or what I like to call them de-escalation zones, that decision was very much welcomed by the Syrian government and our UN ambassador to United Nations, who leads the talks for the Syrian government in Astana, Dr. Bashar Jafari. The reason, it not only does it just stop the fighting, which will lead eventually to an ultimate permanent ceasefire, but it's also is very important that it will improve the humanitarian conditions in these areas, which will set the tone for an eventual and comprehensive political situation. And that's what the Syrian government have been aiming for, and that's what we feel that the international community should help the Syrian people to get together and get to the peace talk moving, instead of continuing to support one party against the other. Now, while the Syrian government have welcomed this, the oppositions and the proxy parties against Syria have not welcomed this position. Actually, the opposition have stormed out of the Astana building when just as soon as it was signed by the 3 major parties, Iran, Turkey, and Russia. You might ask why? Because really the opposition has never been interested in de-escalation of this crisis or in the humanitarian conditions of the people in these zones. All they needed is to continue to carry on this war, to continue to destabilize Syria into an eventual regime change. And that has been the U.S. policy in Syria. And that is exactly why we can see that for 6 years now, the Syrian conflict has not been resolved, simply because there is too many warring parties in Syria. If you remember, 6 years after the U.S. helped the moderate rebels in Libya overthrow Muammar Gaddafi, Libya has gone from enjoying the highest standard in living in Africa to a complete failed state. Sex slavery, illegal arms trade, and of course ISIS maintaining a very strong hold of the whole country. They're trying to do the same thing in Syria. That's the ultimate goal. Luckily in Syria, and for the Syrian people, they have stand together against the escalation of fights. There's a lot of things that we don't hear about it here in the Western media, which is reconciliations. In many parts of the country, the people have putting down their arms, and they're welcoming any efforts to, and the people of Syria, they welcome any demilitarization of this conflict, try to put an end to it. And that is exactly what we have been trying to achieve as peace-loving people, whether we were on the side of the government or on the side of some of the political opposition, not the armed opposition who have no interest in political solutions, but some of the political opposition to the Syrian government who don't believe in militarization are willing to sit down and talk and have what we call transitional government eventually and peace talks. So this is a very important, I think, win to the Syrian government and to the end of this crisis. Now, we need to remember also that this war on ISIS cannot be won unless we have those 4 security zones. If in this memorandum does hold place, we should be expecting the Syrian army to make an offense toward the middle and the eastern part of the country, mainly Raqqa, and hopefully be able to capture the city of Deir ez-Zor. And that is going to take place, I think, in late May, early June, but that can only be achieved, again, if these parts, those 4 areas which we're talking about, northern part of Homs, Daraa, and Idlib, and Damascus is calm. If these cities are calm, then we can maintain a very much successful campaign against ISIS and the eventual defeat of this notorious terrorist organization. You might want to ask, why hasn't the United States succeeded maybe so far? And we're coming on to exactly 1,000 days, 1,000 days and 1,000 nights since the United States coalition, made up 60 countries, have decided to fight this ISIS. You might think it took only a couple of weeks, I think, for the United States government to defeat a 500,000 Iraqi army and to call it mission accomplished. You have to ask yourself, one must take note that the fight against international terrorism has been unjustifiably dragged down. 1,000 days and almost 3 years fighting maybe 100,000 fighters and in open areas. That should not have been the case, especially in our modern warfare, where we know there's ways of finishing conflicts in days if we really were serious about it. So this is what we say, that the United States government has no intention of really completely defeating ISIS. They would like to contain it, but they do not want to terminate it. Just like they've used Al-Qaeda in the past, they are using ISIS as foot soldiers in Syria for the ultimate goal. The Western proxy war on Syria is about regime change, and nothing less than regime change will accomplish the goal for the United States. And unfortunately, defeating ISIS would mean the end of this conflict in Syria, because we're going to look for political solutions, and the current government is going to remain in power, and Syria will remain a nationalist Arab state. It's something that goes against all the last 15 years of the U.S. policy. We can go back to since 2001, and I can tell you the former NATO commander Wesley Clark has gone on record stating that Syria was on the list of targeted nation. In 2002, the Undersecretary John Bolton gave a speech entitled Beyond the Axis of Evils, where he included Syria and Libya as part of the targeted nations. We fast forward to Arab Springs in 2011. And that's exactly what we've seen, what was portrayed in mainstream Western media to be a protest movement. Upon closer examinations, one can reveal that it's a Washington-inspired insurgency carried by the Takfiri groups and foreign militants invading Syria from all over the world for one ultimate regime change policy in the Middle East.
And again, we've been speaking with our great brother Johnny Achi, who is with the Arab Americans for Syria. Thank you, Brother Johnny.
Thank you so much.